I want to start by talking about something that we are familiar with as Seventh-day Adventists. Around the mid-1800s, a man by the name of William Miller began to study the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. And other people became interested in his findings, and they became known as the Millerites, and later on Adventists. And around 1863, Seventh-day Adventist Church was formed. But I said that to say this: the message was so powerful and went forth to so many people that they gave the church a name. I don't know if any of you have ever heard it, but Seventh-day Adventists were called Howlers of Doom. Well, I think that it's good that we have decided to go forth as Jesus has told us to do, and telling people about this message, the three angels message and health message, and everything that Jesus would have us to do. The sermon's title is The Two-Horned Beast. It's going to take me a minute to get to that text. But Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, is the opening verse of the book of Revelation, which states that it is the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to him to show to his servant things which must shortly come to pass. It explains the origin and purpose of the book. God gave it to Jesus to show to his servant John things which must shortly come to pass, and signified it by his angel. The purpose is to reveal or unveil things that must shortly come to pass to God's servant. The Greek word for revelation is apocalypse, meaning a disclosure or an unveiling. Revelation chapter 1, verse 3 states that those who read, hear, and keep the words of the prophecy are blessed because the time is near. It is a blessing upon the listeners and readers who obey the prophecy's message and apply it to their lives. Revelation chapter 1, verse 9 says, I, John, who also am your brother and companion in tribulation, and in the kingdom and patience of Jesus Christ, was in the isle that is called Patmos for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ. The island of Patmos off the coast of Asia Minor, western Turkey, was the location of the Apostle John's exile. There he recorded the visions preserved in the last book of the Bible, entitled The Revelation of Jesus Christ. It is in these sacred pages that the Christian is most solemnly and repeatedly warned of the emergence of the Antichrist power, the second Babylon, the mother of harlots, who would persecute the true seed and who would be drunk with the blood of the saints. Revelation chapter 17, verse 5 and 6. Revelation chapter 13 is a continuation of Revelation chapter 12. John said in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 through 4, And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name Blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power to the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? As the Apostle John stood upon the seashore, he was given a vision. He saw a beast rise up out of the sea. In Bible prophecy, a beast represents a kingdom. Daniel chapter 7, verse 23 says, The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth. The sea is a large body of water. In Bible prophecy, water represents people. Revelation chapter 17, verse 15 says, The waters which you saw where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. The leopard-bodied beast is the same power represented by the little horn of Daniel 7. Daniel chapter 7, verse 23 speaks of the fourth kingdom. The fourth kingdom that ruled over the earth was the Roman Empire. And the little horn came up among the barbarian nations represented by the 10 horns of the fourth beast. In Bible prophecy, a horn also represents a kingdom. See Daniel chapter 8, verse 8 and 22. There was only one kingdom that rose among the 10 divisions of the Roman Empire. It was a spiritual kingdom, the Roman Catholic Church. As already stated, Revelation chapter 13 is a continuation of Revelation chapter 12. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 3, John said he saw a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. In his description of the sea beast in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, John described it as having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. This is something you may not have noticed, and it is very important in understanding who the sea beast is concerning its identity. Notice the location of the horns in Revelation chapter 12, verse 3, and Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. Notice the locations of the horns. The dragon had crowns on its 7 heads and none on its 10 horns. The beast, however, had crowns on its 10 horns and none on its 7 heads. Thus, the arrival of the sea beast in Revelation chapter 13 announced a departure from the era of the Roman Empire and an entrance into the era of the invading tribes. Now notice what it says in verse 2. The dragon gave him his seat and great authority. History tells us that in 330 A.D., Roman Emperor Constantine moved to Constantinople, making it his new capital in the east. The western half was controlled by the Pope. And in 533, Emperor Justinian made the Pope head of all churches. But there were 3 nations that opposed the Catholic Church, and the Pope had all 3 annihilated. That's what you read about in Daniel chapter 7, where it says 3 were plucked up by the roots. He had them completely annihilated. They were the Heruli in 493 A.D., the Vandals in 534 A.D., and the Ostrogoths in 538 A.D. It was in the year 538 AD, that the Roman Catholic Church was firmly established. It was a political religious power. The Pope ruled the Papal States, a territory in Italy, where he currently rules. But the prophecy foretold that he would be dethroned. Revelation chapter 13, verse 3 and 4 says, "And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Now for his dethronement." During the French Revolution, under orders from the revolutionary French government, General Alexander Berthier issued a proclamation in Rome on February 15, 1798, informing Pope Pius VI and the people of Rome that the Pope should no longer exercise any function. Pope Pius was arrested by French troops, taken prisoner, and exiled to France. Revelation chapter 13, verse 3 calls the dethroning of the Pope a deadly wound. The verse also says, "And his deadly wound was healed." The deadly wound symbolized the loss of the papacy's temporal power in 1798 when Napoleon's general arrested the Pope. This was a significant blow to the institution's authority. The wound is said to have healed over time, signifying the return of papal power and influence. In 1929, the Lateran Treaty, which established the Vatican City as an independent state, is seen as a key event in the healing process of the deadly wound. But the deadly wound has not been fully healed. Revelation chapter 13, verse 5 says, "And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blaspheming, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. 42 months times 30 equals 1,260. In Bible prophecy, a day stands for a year consisting of 360 days. See Numbers chapter 14, verse 34, Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 6. The Catholic Church was established in 538 AD. Adding 538 to 1,260 equals 1798. The very year specified by prophecy that the Roman Catholic Church would receive the deadly wound. We read in Revelation chapter 13, verse 6, "And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven." How so? The title Holy Father is used for the Pope. The Bible uses the title Holy Father for God the Father. In John chapter 17, verse 11, when Jesus was praying, he said to his Father, "Holy Father." The Bible reserves the title Holy Father for God alone, highlighting his unique sanctity. On April 29, 1922, Pope Pius XI said to a throng of cardinals, bishops, boys, and girls who had all fallen on their knees before him in reverence, "You know that I am the Holy Father, the representative of God on the earth, the vicar of Christ, which means I am God on the earth. October 1922, page 104, the Bulwark. Revelation chapter 13, verse 6 says, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle. How is it that he blasphemed God's tabernacle? Roman Catholicism set up a system in opposition to Christ's priestly ministry in the heavenly sanctuary. The modern confession book was set up in the year 1576. But we know that confession should be directed to God. God alone can forgive sins. Psalms chapter 32, verse 5 says, I acknowledge my sin unto thee, and mine iniquity have I not hid. I said, I will confess my transgressions unto thee, Lord, and you forgave the iniquity of my sin. And 1 John chapter 1, verse 9, it says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins. In Revelation chapter 13, verse 7, it says, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. From the birth of the papacy to the present time, it is estimated by careful and credible historians that more than 50 million of the human family have been slaughtered for the crime of heresy by papal persecutors. See W.E.H. Leakey, Rationalism in Europe, Volume 2, page 32. Revelation chapter 13, verse 8 and 9 tells us, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose name are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. In these verses, the warning is given concerning the influence and power that the papacy will have when its deadly wound is completely healed. Verse 10 says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword shall be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. It asserts that the persecuted will ultimately be vindicated and the persecutors will face divine retribution. In verse 11 of Revelation chapter 13, John said, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. The 2-horned beast came up out of the earth. If the sea from which the leopard-bodied beast arose in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, denotes people, nations, and multitudes, Revelation 17:15, the earth would suggest that by contrast, a new and previously unoccupied territory, by exclusion from eastern continents, and by looking to territory not previously known to civilization, we turn of necessity to the Western Hemisphere. John saw the two-horned beast coming up around the time the leopard-bodied beast received the deadly wound in 1798. Our gaze will be fixed on the year 1798, when the power symbolized was then useful. What noble power was at that time coming up into prominence, but still in its youth? England was not, nor was France, nor was Russia, nor any European power. Can anyone doubt what nation was actually coming up in 1798? Certainly, it must be admitted that the United States of America is the only power that meets the specifications of the prophecy on this point of chronology. The struggle for the American colonies for independence began in 1775. In 1776, they declared themselves a free and independent nation. In 1777, delegates from the 13 original states, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia in Congress assembled, adopted Articles of Confederation. In 1783, the War of the Revolution closed with a treaty of peace with Great Britain, whereby the independence of the United States was acknowledged. Less than 3 months after the Constitution was signed, Delaware became the first state to ratify it. On December 7, 1787, New Hampshire was the 9th state, putting the Constitution into effect on June 21, 1788. Our Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791. We came up right on time around 1798, when the first beast of Revelation, chapter 13, verse 3, was going down. Therefore, the two-horned beast in Revelation chapter 13, verse 11, represent the United States of America. The two horns, these horns symbolize the government's initial gentle and peaceful nature based on religious and civil liberty. Revelation chapter 13, verse 11 through 14 says, "And he spake as a dragon, and he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceive them that dwell on the earth by those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live." The prediction that it will speak as a dragon and exercise all the power of the beasts that were before him plainly foretells a development of the spirit of intolerance and persecution that was manifested by the nations represented by the dragon and the leopard-like beast. And the statement that the beast with two horns causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast indicates that the authority of this nation is to be exercised in enforcing some observance which shall be an act of homage to the papacy. The question may be asked, how can this be? Because the Constitution of the United States provides that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's a legitimate question, because when you talk to people about this, that's the first thing that comes to their mind, the Constitution. We're protected by the Constitution. That can't happen. But what I discovered when I was studying this, and I've been studying it for a long time, is this. The answer is found in verse 13 and 14. It says, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Listen and understand. For Satan to make fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of man, he himself must be on the earth. We're told, as the crowning act in the great drama of deception, Satan himself will personate Christ. Now, I want you to notice and pay close attention to what I'm going to say. In order to accomplish his purpose, the false Christ must imitate the true Christ. While he was on earth, Jesus raised the dead. In John chapter 11, verse 39 through 44, Jesus went to the cave where Lazarus was buried, and he raised him from the dead. Take note. In 1 Samuel chapter 28, Satan performed a false resurrection of the prophet Samuel, whereby he deceived Saul. Verse 11 says, then said the woman, whom shall I bring up unto you? And he said, bring me up Samuel. Verse 14 says, an old man cometh up, and Saul perceived that it was Samuel. In Revelation chapter 13, verse 14, it says concerning Satan's end-time deception, says he deceived them that dwell on the earth by those miracles which he had power to do. I want you to notice something else. In Revelation chapter 16, verse 13, the dragon represents Satan working through spiritualism. And what is spiritualism? Spiritualism is a channel through which Satan works for the accomplishment of his purpose. He has the power to bring before men the appearance of their departed friends. The counterfeit is perfect. The familiar look, the words, the tone are reproduced with marvelous distinctness. We are told Satan uses evil angels to assume the form of departed loved ones to comfort the bereaved and gain their confidence. This personation of the dead is part of Satan's final effort, which culminates in his ultimate deception, personating Christ himself as a majestic being of dazzling brightness, performing miracles, and claiming to have changed the Sabbath to Sunday. Revelation chapter 13, verse 15 says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. The image to the beast represent that form of apostate Protestantism which will be developed when the Protestant churches shall seek the aid of the civil power for the enforcement of their dogmas. Great controversy, page 442. Revelation chapter 16 says, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. I asked the question, what is the mark of the beast? I have heard outside of this church so many definitions or interpretation of what the mark of the beast is. And they all were wrong. The only denomination outside of this denomination that I've ever heard get it right was Herbert Armstrong, Worldwide Church of God. And they got it from us. They got it from the Adventist. But they are able to go down through the 9 points just like we do. But other than that, I've heard people say, well, it's a computer chip that they're going to put under your skin. I've heard people say, well, they're going to step 666 in your forehead or in your hand. I mean, it should be obvious to any rational thinking being that can't be it, because I would know not to do that. But I asked the question, what is the mark of the beast? Okay, Roman Catholicism is the beast. We learned that from Bible prophecy. And they explain to all what their mark is. Now, this is what they say concerning their mark. Sunday is our mark of authority. The church is above the Bible, and this transfers of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. Catholic Record, London, Ontario, September 1, 1923. The mark of the beast is willful, knowledgeable, in-time approval of coercive Sunday observance in opposition to the clear light on the Sabbath question and in harmony with classic Roman Catholicism. As such, the mark of the beast is evidence of personal character matured in opposition to God. The mark is a symbol. It is a symbolic mark. To receive it in the hand means the person cooperate in order to buy or sell. The forehead represents the mind and belief. Receiving the mark in the forehead means believing in and consciously choosing to worship the system that opposes God. Verse 18 talks about the number of his name. The Pope's title is Vicar of the Son of God. In Latin, it is Vicarius Filii Dei. When you add up the Roman numerals in this title, you get 666. The reason why I chose this sermon is because we may be closer than we think to the development of the mark of the beast. There are significant developments going on right now concerning Sunday legislation that most of us in this room have heard nothing about. Now, I can't get into politics and stuff like that, but when you look around and you see what's going on in the world today, it makes you wonder. I didn't just say in Memphis, it makes you wonder. You can see that something is wrong. But I can't say this. I heard our president say we need to get back to religion. You see, now when the evangelical world talks about getting back to religion, what they mean is we need to get, start back going to church on Sunday. You see, so when you think about what is going to happen, it's mind-boggling to think and understand that the United States of America, the home of the brave, the land of the free, would stoop this low. But God says it's going to happen, and we need to be prepared because it says that people are not going to be able to buy. That means, if you want some food, you want some gas, if you have not received the mark of the beast, you're not going to be able to do it. If you have a business, you're not going to be able to sell what you have. I mean, we have to ask ourselves, are we ready for this? If not, we need to be prepared because, see, one thing I understand about this is this. Everything a person have of value, you will have to forsake it. You will have to be able to live out in the woods, eating off of certain plants and drinking water. That's why I think Brother William had something to do with the class that taught this. And, that's what this is about. You see, it's a time that a person is really going to have to be prepared for this. So I just look at what's going on and say, well, I should say something that's encouraging to the church concerning where we are headed, because people say, where is the world headed? Where is this world? It's headed to an end. So we must be prepared. We must meditate on these things. We must go out and tell others about what God has said. The three angels message is a powerful message. God gave it to the Seventh-day Adventist church. He said, now, you go give it to the world. Let me say this in closing. I had the opportunity to work for a rich lady. And what that did, it gave me insight on what Jesus meant when he said how hard it is for a rich person to go to heaven. I asked her, by the way, this is a wonderful person, good person. I consider her a friend. But I asked her, I said, why do you want another pond dug? She says, well, that one, she got two. She said, well, those are not deep enough. Now, the fish in the pond, one of them cost $1,500, just one fish. So what I did, I sit on the porch of that mansion every day, and I would look around, and, we would talk and everything. And so one day she came out, she said, oh, I'm losing my mind. Scared me. I said, what's the matter, Susan? She said, oh, but I know what it was. See, she had ordered some rocks to go in the pond, and it came on a flatbed 18-wheeler. There was so many. And she didn't know what to do. So I said, everything going to be all right. He gave her a little hug and talked to her about stress and Jesus and everything. But the point I'm making is this. She got five businesses. And two maids. They don't even make up their bed. The maid go and knock on the door. So they come out, the maids can go in and make up the beds. And so one day, the girl that used to come out and work in the place of the maid. I saw her, she gave a lot of shoes and clothes, and she told me, she said, you know, I went in there to clean out the closet. She said she had minks, coats, and chinchillas from one end to the other. But the point I'm making is this. In a situation like that, do you think a person could forsake all that? You think a person can say, okay, well, I spent 30 years building this business and all of this, but see, that's what the enemy wants us to do, to be unprepared. Thank you, brothers and sisters.